Active Investor here, bringing you another independent analysis. This time we're taking a look at Verastem Incorporated. Now, Verastem Incorporated did have a low here around $1.27, and it's been in a nice uptrend ever since. Before we get started on that, let me mention that these candles are 15-minute candles, so we have about 2 weeks of trading on this whole chart, but most of the price action happened in the last 3 days, right around here and here, of course. And before we get to that, though, let's just look at the overall chart. So we had this low at 127. And ever since we had that low, we have been in a pretty nice uptrend. But after that day where the uptrend kind of started from that low, we really didn't have too much movement. So we kind of channeled for a while in between $1.50 and $1 and about 45 cents. So these blue lines are my pivot points, areas that once acted as support and then became resistance. And what I really like about this chart is these pivot points are spot on. So we have really good historical data on this trade if we're going to go into it. So we can really get a good indicator of where our price targets will be, where our support and resistance levels are. And let's just go day by day here. So you can see after the first little run up, we did channel here for a bit. We pushed up from that pivot point and we did break this one, but not very steadily. And we ended up breaking back down there at the very end of the day. The next day we opened up and pushed above, and it just kind of channeled. It did break the pivot point, but not very strong, and then it actually ended up breaking back down below the next day. It tried to break up again and was denied. Just ran in the channel. Tried to break up again on this candle, a real high wick, but it closed much lower, so it wasn't strong enough. Channeled again. Tried to push up again here, got denied. Actually ran to the next pivot point at 140. Right around 145 that would be, and it bounced off, and then next day opened up, tried to get bullish and did pretty well, but got denied at first, then ended up breaking above, so that was good, but it couldn't hold those gains. It ended up closing below the pivot point, or actually rather it ended up almost closing below the pivot point, but the last 2 candles of the day here on the 15-minute did end up closing above, so that was good. The next day our wicks ended up touching below that pivot point, but it closed above. And then it was denied at the next pivot point. And then here is the last trading day, and this is the most important thing. So we opened here at about $1.60, and immediately we broke the pivot point at about $1.65, pushed up to $1.75. We didn't break it right away. It was denied and retested that area of support. But then later on the day, it ran up again. And not only did it break that pivot point, but it broke the next one at $1.85. And it ran all the way to $1.93, our final pivot point on this chart. And it was denied there, and it ended up dipping right back down to the prior pivot point at $1.85. So these pivot points really, really do work. So we can get a great idea of where the price is going to go. And just know that even though you can't see it on this chart, the next pivot point is about $2.15. So what that means is we're looking at a trade that could potentially net us, if we get in, if this, if it doesn't move after hours or pre-market really, we can get in at about $1.85, and we can look for an exit at about $1.93. And if we push above that, we can look at an exit at about $2.15. So there's reasonable upside there. From $1.85 to $1.93, that's a little bit more than a scalp even. That's a fairly nice little chunk of gain there. But if we break $1.93 and we push above it, look for an exit around $2.15. And obviously that would be a pretty sweet stock to flip there from 183 to 215. That's a real nice trade. But keep in mind that whenever you get to a point like $2 or so, there is a mental resistance at a number like that. So we could see mental resistance at $2 and people selling off there. If that mental resistance doesn't happen, the real resistance is at 215 though. So we're looking at a pretty nice trade there. Now, our support levels, we're at $1.85 and then $1.75. So if it does dip, we can look for an entrance there. We also have the Tenkan and the Kaijin lines on the way. So we have a pretty decent level of support, which is good because the cloud, which is usually a level of support, is really low from the current price per share. So that support is pretty far below, but we do have 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of support before the cloud, so I'm really not worried about that at all. And actually, all that space between the cloud and the current price per share, that indicates that we're in a pretty strong uptrend. One other indicator of the uptrend being that strong is, take a look at this parabolic downtrend, these white lines. When we initiated the downtrend and when we stopped the downtrend, the price per share really didn't move much at all. It really just kind of channeled the whole time. So the downtrend was weak when it tried to be a downtrend, and then it went right back up to a parabolic uptrend. But look at how strong this uptrend was. We went from about 165 to $1.93 just during that single parabolic uptrend. So overall, the uptrend is much more powerful than the downward pressure. So that's a great sign there indeed. It's really about it for the technical analysis on this chart. I told you guys what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be looking for an entrance around 185. with a real tight stop loss. Maybe I'll put it at about 180 or 181 even, depending on how that's going. And I'll look for an exit at 193 or 215, depending on the buying and selling pressure coming in. So there's not too much downside on this trade, and there is a real nice level of upside. You know, it's not the biggest gains in the world, but swinging from 185 to 215 is a real nice chunk of change indeed. And I will gladly take those profits off the table if this trade does look good tomorrow. So just keep an eye on this, guys. If you have any sort of questions or comments, please leave a message in the comments below, or send me a message privately. Either way, whatever is your style, I will get back to you as soon as possible, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to think on this trade. Keep an eye on it tomorrow, and if you do make a play, best of luck. Let's make some money, guys. Catch you later.